colleagues who have used the term like slow down to speed up. And I really like that because I think that makes a lot of sense. Slow down to speed up, meaning, are you with the right people? Are you having the right conversations? Have you qualified? Do you have all the information you need to proceed to the next stage? Those I think are really great questions to ask.
This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 344, Slow Down to Speed Up, an interview with Amy Dordek.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And have you ever been in a situation where you've been trying to go so fast that it actually slows you down? In your rush to completion, you're skipping important steps, and you're at a level that some might even call it sloppy. Way too often, I've tried to rush a sale when it would make a whole lot more sense to slow down in order to speed up the sale. Today, our guest is Amy Dordek. Amy and I chat about the velocity of deals and how to find that perfect balance that's not too fast and not too slow so you can optimize the closing time of your deals. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Amy. Are you ready to babble?
I'm ready to babble.
Amy, I got your LinkedIn pulled up here, and it says you're the sales leader, business development, and executive startup founder and board advisor. You got a lot going on your plate these days.
I do. That's how I am best. I remember my mentor in my life, Marilyn Listener. She's still in business. She's a commercial real estate broker. And she used to say, like, you should feel like you're almost drowning in work to feel comfortable. She said that's how she likes to feel. And I thought to myself, I kind of like to be super busy as well. I feel like I'm my best self when I have a couple things going and I'm engaging in, a number of different activities, including sales, mentoring salespeople, doing sales, selling services, teaching people about sales. So that's what I like to do.
And this is exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast. We were talking about, I think about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't remember exactly. And even though you're really busy, it's easy talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I get good feedback on my listening skills. And as a salesperson, people think, all people know how to do is sell, I don't know, sell ice to, refrigerators or whatever they say. But like, I feel like one of my superpowers is good listening skills.
I think a lot of that's baloney, this whole idea, in that great salespeople can sell anything to anybody. That's a terrible model. Isn't that a terrible model for a salesperson?
Well, yeah, and also there's so many different types of selling, and there are different types of, what success looks like in a sales role in an organization, and then in a role. So, yes, I agree. Like, I mean, there's this argument whether you're born or taught to be a good salesperson, and I think that I don't know that you're born a salesperson. I don't believe in that. I do believe that you're born wired with certain characteristics that probably make you a better salesperson. Um, Maybe because you have certain, skills that align with good selling. But I think you can be taught to be a great salesperson too.
I think that's the whole point of this podcast here, selling secrets for non-sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast never saw themselves as salespeople. They know that they need to get better at persuasion, but kind of deep in their heart, they go, I'm not really a salesperson and I can never learn this. But I believe we all have it. Actually, I'm very, very hopeful. I believe we all have, if you have a helpful mindset, like you help people in your families and friends, if you could somehow project that onto customers, you can be very successful.
Completely. Couldn't agree with you more.
So you've been doing this for a while. You've been working with sales organizations for quite some time. How do you think sales has evolved?
I think sales has evolved that people want you to be about them. Customers want you to be more customer centric, maybe than ever before. And a word I'm going to use, and I don't use it lightly, and I don't use it in a way that is trite, but authenticity and transparency are probably more important now than ever, in this time of COVID, as well as just in the marketplace, because the salesperson can be a differentiator in the sales process now. And I think customers expect that salesperson to add more value instead of just being a fulfillment, you know, person, somebody who's fulfilling or filling orders, as they used to say. They have to be more customer centric, authentic, transparent, and, hopefully use a sales process that will help them rise above the rest.
I think people really struggle with authenticity and transparency. What's your definition of? Let's do one at a time, okay?
Hmm.
I think this is a really important point. What do you mean by authentic?
So authenticity is sort of being your true self. So that's the difference, I think, with transparency is maybe sharing, and I know you're asking me to do it one at a time, being more truthful, and factual, perhaps, and telling people things maybe that are hard to hear. But authentic is, who I am. So, if I'm asked a question, sometimes I think to myself, I've got to slowly reveal who I am, depending on the setting. But I had a situation the other day where I thought, somebody asked me a question and I had to be my true self, because if I wasn't my true self, this wasn't going to be a good relationship. And in that case, the true self was revealing something that was important to me that I observed might be missing in their organization. And I wondered if they were concerned about that. And it ended up being a great conversation. So I revealed something about myself that I thought would align with what was important to them as well. And so that's how I define authenticity. Um, and then transparency is like, I joke that sometimes I reveal where I am in the sales process with somebody and they kind of crack up, and that's being transparent. So I'll say, like, hey, it's okay. We're just in the discovery phase. There's no pitch yet. When we get to that place, I'll reveal it to you.
I like that honesty. Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes people like to know where they are, where they stand. I think a lot of times they do.
And I think also too, a lot of people are afraid that if their client's not a fit, that it's not a good match, they're almost afraid to say that. And they're hoping maybe the prospects won't notice it, maybe. And
Well,
that,
if a prospect is a bad match, cut your losses right now. You should constantly be qualifying people in or out, because the faster you qualify somebody out, the more you can move on, the faster you can move on to something that will be a better fit or a potential sale for you.
yeah. And I think the struggle with authenticity is that if some people aren't very professional in their real life, they somehow think that means being unprofessional or kidding or saying inappropriate jokes or being a buddy.
Oh, yeah. No, and I don't tend to go to that until we get pretty far down into our trust equation. You know what I mean? Um, Yeah, I mean, revealing what's important is something I do, like, at the appropriate time and the appropriate level. But it's funny, I think you're right that buddy, like, trying to get there too quickly can also be a big problem.
I like the idea of treating people like cousins that you don't see very often, only at funerals and weddings. You know them,
Tell me what that looks like for you.
well, you know them, but you don't know them real well. You wouldn't tease them, right? But you might say, "How's Aunt Sally? How's Uncle George? You still working over there? You still got that dog?" Like that kind of stuff. You wouldn't you wouldn't like immediately like become overly familiar with them, like they're a tight friend.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know if
like
that
it.
makes sense. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, I mean,
And
I
you
don't
can hurt my feelings here. This is what
I
you
don't
won't
have that
hurt
many
my feelings.
cousins. So maybe, and the cousins I have, I'm really close to. So maybe I can't relate to that example,
Maybe you
but
can't relate to that. Yeah, the people you only see at the funerals.
Yeah, what I will say is it's funny because I'm not a big sports analogy person. And so when people try to like buddy up through sports analogies, I think, oh, that's just not my way of relating. And I think more and more today, you have to really understand what it is that will connect you to somebody else. And it can't be just about you and your wants and needs and likes. It has to be, and I think we talked about this, that, it has to be what's more about them. And that's what I think the market is looking for, and hoping that you'll be, as a salesperson for somebody, like that trusted advisor, listening without judgment, really listening to their needs instead of trying to pitch something that you have to offer. That's just not going to fly anymore.
So how does this scale up on the macro? We've been talking about the sales professional. If
hmm
we were to step back and look at the organizations, how would that scale?
So what I think is that companies now need to make sure that they have a sales organization structure, meaning, the what kinds of sales roles they have. So not every company has multiple sales roles, but more and more companies are differentiating the sales role depending on the sales process. So we have in tech, you have, BDRs, SDRs, sales BDRs are business development reps, somebody who's teeing up the opportunity. Once it becomes an opportunity, it might go to somebody else, an account manager, or might even go to, once it's closed, to a customer success manager. That's sort of a tech model, but many companies are differentiating, and less do you have the same person. Although that is my expertise of being a hunter and a farmer all in one. Once you bring the business in, then you grow the business. I think a lot of companies are breaking those apart, or at least breaking apart the customer success piece, so that they can, sell more to existing customers in a different way, and have the other person go out and find new business. And the reason I break it down like this is I think you have to understand what is your strategy, and then how is your organization structure aligned to that strategy, so that you're, creating the most effective sales process, sales organization structure, and then you have the right people in the right jobs. That's what I think is going to be more and more important. And I don't hear very many people talking about this, and the reason I talk about it is when I started the company Growth Play, we acquired different sales expertise. And one of the things we acquired, one of the companies we acquired, is a sales assessment tool called Chally, now called Growth Play Chally. And that sales assessment tool assesses people against different roles. And so I think people are going to more data-driven decisions and more, specialization in roles. So that's what I think is happening on the macro level, is looking at the org structure. I hope people are looking at the org structure, making sure it's aligned with how you sell and who your buyers are and how they buy.
So this assessment tool that you're working with, it's somehow it separates out people who are hunters, separate people who are farmers. Like hunters would be more SDRs, BDRs, I assume, and farmers would be more account execs, right?
Exactly. And so it looks at the competencies. And I know that's sort of like an HR sounding word, but it looks at the skills and capabilities, behaviors, motivators, that drive high performers in hunter roles versus low performers, high performers in account manager roles instead of versus low performers. And what I mean by that, it kind of teases out the things that you need to do in that role. So it's not testing your personality per se, like you're extroverted. So by the way, extroverts are not the only types of people that can be successful in sales roles. I want to dispel that myth right now.
Totally agree.
Um,
Totally
I
agree.
think that, in fact, people who are more introverted often are very good salespeople because they're good listeners. They're asking questions. They're not egocentric. They're maybe, other centric. And so we're looking at behavior, skills, activities that define high performing activities, performing things you do in a job versus like how you were born with these personality traits. That's the difference. And that's what this assessment tool gets at. It can be used for assessing candidates, should not be used as a, you're in or you're out. It should be used as a data point to go dig deeper into questioning. And then it can also be used for development as you decide, should Amy or should Bob or Sue be your next sales leader. It can look at that same assessment data that you got in the beginning and slice it and dice it in a way to say, oh, you know what, Susie might be better than Amy for the sales role. She has more of the competencies that align with the sales leader, which would be more like team performance, or somebody who's more interested in, getting to success through collaboration. Those are competencies. more aligned with highly successful sales leaders.
Organizations have had like inside and outside sales kind of people,
Hmm.
and inbound inside and outbound inside people who don't go anywhere, they stay in the office. And
Right.
there's outside salespeople who historically travel. Um, Maybe they're hunters, you know, they're definitely closers. And
Sure.
we've had a tendency to pay closers more than people who find leads. It sounds to me like what you're talking about, that maybe that whole the whole pay structure is screwed up.
No, I don't know that I agree with that. I think that finding leads is more now marketing generated than ever before. I think that what SDRs are doing qualified inbound marketing leads and taking those leads, whatever that lead looks like. If it was somebody responded to a form, somebody went to the website. I think what SDRs and BDRs are doing more is taking those people and then qualifying them. So I think there should be an upside incentive for them to qualify them very quickly in or out and then move them to the closer. But I think that somebody who's, especially in a more sophisticated close, I mean, not that technology sales aren't sophisticated closes, because they could be, especially very big ones. They're very, often technical and include a lot of, um, aspects of the contract that need to be negotiated. So I think you should always pay somebody who's got more complexity of the job more money. But I think everybody in the sales process should have some upside potential, some incentive comp, let's call
Awesome. Interesting. I had I've had a lot of conversations with people who are very pro SDRs.
it. Yeah, I mean that's great, and there's such a good place for them. Not every business, I've been in a lot of B2B companies, and we never had such a thing because we're not moving to a demo. We're moving to a more sophisticated solutioning conversation. And so I don't know that, that's, maybe you have a BDR, but maybe you call it a little something else. Maybe it's somebody who's initially qualifying, which I guess is part of what SDRs and BDRs do. But I have not been in many companies that had many delineations of roles. I've had it more where the marketing team is helping, with the inbound leads, and then it comes to either someone like me, a hunter, or someone like an account manager, sometimes like me as well. I think it just depends on your organization and how your buyers buy and how quickly you want to be able to close. If you have a transactional sale, you might want to delineate those roles. If you have a
Mm.
very long sales cycle, you may not need to. But you need to then, like you mentioned, you need to align comp accordingly.
Yeah, I come from the B2B space, enterprise sales and things like that. And so my next question is something you talked about before, that organizations are being more data driven.
Hmm.
Salesforce, which is pick on them because it's fun to pick on Salesforce. There's a ton of data you can collect. In your opinion, what's the really important data sales managers need to be looking at?
I think just how deals, projects, opportunities are moving through the sales funnel. I mean, that's something that I think I look at. And then, are the conversations progressing? Are people asking the right discovery questions? Are they qualifying? We use in my past Medic to understand, you're talking to the right people. Are you having conversations with the economic buyer? Do you even know who that is? Are you only talking to influencers who can't make decisions and don't have the budget? Those are things that I want to hear people talk about. Um, so that's what, I would be looking for. Moving through the funnel, how quickly are people moving through the funnel? Do you have enough in the funnel? Those kinds of things.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
I,
mean, and that's what, so
I,
hopefully Salesforce is measuring. I mean, you should be able to see everything that is in Salesforce, and how fast is it moving depending on your sale. What are the kinds of conversations? I mean, I like to mix objective and, in this case, subjective, because you want to know what kind of conversations, what is the messaging, people are using to talk about your solution. Are they using the right messaging? Those kinds of things.
I like the idea of looking at velocity, but I don't know if you
Yeah.
can really run a report on velocity.
Oh, I mean, I think in Salesforce, well, first of all, don't you think you can do whatever you want in Salesforce?
No,
Salesforce
no,
gives
no,
you
no, no.
endless.
Oh, it has its limits in its reporting. I know that for a fact. There's a lot of things I would like, but I think that's an excellent take on that? That the velocity matters, and
Yeah.
for different kinds of projects at different times of the year, a slower velocity might make more sense, or a faster one might make sense, but they might not make sense at different times of the year, or different products and
Right,
market.
or what you're selling, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you go, I've had colleagues who have used the term like slow down to speed up.
Mm.
And I really like that because I think that makes a lot of sense. Slow down to speed up, meaning, are you with the right people? Are you having the right conversations? Have you qualified? Do you have all the information you need to proceed to the next stage? Those I think are really great questions to ask.
Yeah, or all the stake. Have you talked to all the
All the
stakeholders?
stakeholders, exactly.
Have you personally touched them all and know that they're where they're at, where their heads are at?
Yeah, and do you know that they have the budget to do what you're asking, to buy? So,
Exactly. Yeah. So so we know what data we want to collect, and we know what we would like some of the people to have the behaviors. How do we get the right people in place?
yeah, like I said, I mean, I think it is really, really important. I'm going to pick on a methodology. I'm not going to state what it is exactly, but this whole like I'm only looking for A players. I don't know why, but that bothers me, and I'm going to get at it from two angles. One
Mm,
is what you think is an A player and what I think is an A player are going to be different. So I don't like that term A player because I think it is super subjective. I think what I'd rather hear or have people look for is what are the right skills, capabilities, behaviors, background for a given role, like we talked about. Is it a an indirect salesperson, like you talked about, inbound, outbound, new business development versus strategic account manager or sales leader? So a player, I mean, if you have to use that term, I don't like it because I think you're not looking just for a specific type of person. I think that's what people conjure in their mind. Like an A player is like a killer, a winner, win at all costs. Like they have this image, and I'd rather have it more, like I said, data driven or factual, or down to the skills capabilities required for somebody to be successful in an inbound or outbound role. And if you think about it, when you're doing something like SDR and BDR, you need consistency. You need somebody who can follow a process. You need somebody who can engage quickly and move them to the next stage. Those aren't personality traits. Those are like the way you do your job. And so that's why, for some reason, I don't know why, for me, the A player really bugs me because I think it's just, I know that for a lot of people, and I'm going to go specific here, it conjures up a really aggressive male. And like we talked about before, um, it can be a wide variety of people. And I guess my second point to this A player or talent is more and more your company is going to be scrutinized. Any company, whoever you are, is going to be more scrutinized for the level of diversity you either have or don't have. And when people use more subjective measures around sales talent, Glenn Ross is your ideal, like salespeople, like coffee is for closers and steak knives is for second place. Um, I think you're going to be in trouble. I think you need to have much more objective measures so you can widen the aperture of the type of candidates you attract. And I've often been the only woman salesperson or sales leader. And we got to change that. We have to have more salespeople that reflect our diverse customer base.
I was just on a webinar yesterday. There was a guy from Google talking, and there was a venture capital um, a lady, and they reflected exactly what you just said. They feel like diversity is really, really important. Um, you're going to need to do this. Not only does it make it better for your team, it's going to open you up to more opportunities because some
Yes.
companies they care deeply about this.
Yes, I care deeply about it, and I've cared deeply about it for long before it was popular because as the only young woman hired in my little cohort coming out of college into commercial real estate, I can tell you that it was not easy. I had only my bosses, who were the only two women in the company, to look to for being sort of different, but still being successful. I didn't know if I was allowed to wear pants. So that's going back a long time because women didn't even wear, like, you had to dress a certain way if you were a woman in business back in those days. And, I'm dating myself, but in the 90s. And, now I think you better be diversifying your sales talent so that when you have meetings with customers, I mean, I have a mentee that I mentor, and she told me a story about how a sales team was chosen for a specific pursuit, and they knew the customer were two women. The customer was a very successful, I think it was an e-commerce company, very, very successful company owned by two women. And they knew this fact, and they put an all-male team in front of those two customers. And good for them, because I would have done the same thing. The customers called them out and did not select this vendor. And my colleague, my mentee, was not selected to be part of that presentation. She was one of the only women. And I just think that's foolish. And I hope that's not happening too often today. But it's something that maybe people don't often think about. They probably thought, these are the three people who know this industry the best. But it was a poor decision. And so these are the things I think people are going to have to pay more attention to in the future. Now, and in the future.
Yep, I totally agree. If people wanted to find you online, they wanted to connect with you, where would they go? Where would they go to learn about you and about Growth Play?
Yeah, and all the things I do. You would go to LinkedIn. I'm just Amy Dordek on LinkedIn. I also go by Amy Dordek Dolinsky because my husband and I, in a different life, have a little pizza business, and so I can be found everywhere as at Amy Dordek. And I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and I'm very, very active in LinkedIn. Amy Dordek.
What's your favorite pizza?
What is my favorite pizza? My favorite pizza is thin crust pizza. So Chicago has 10 styles of pizza. And my favorite style is tavern style thin pizza, very traditional Chicago party cut, those little triangles and squares. And I love Pat's Pizza. It's been around a really long time. It's in Lakeview, kind of on the way to Wrigley Field, not too far on Lincoln.
I love Margaritas.
I haven't had that in a long time.
Those really thin ones.
Oh, Margarita.
Yeah.
Yes, I love. We would call that Neapolitan or artisan pizza.
I love those. I had those in Italy all the time. They were awesome.
I thought you were referring to there used to be and I don't know that it's called Marguerite's, but there was an old Italian restaurant on the north side on North Clark, and I can't remember if that was the name or not. A cute little old Italian restaurant, and now I'm blanking on the name. I don't think it was Marguerite's, but and they used to have like kind of old style Italian food and pizza.
No, I was using the Italian word.
Oh, pizza margarita. Well, I told you I would do a giveaway.
Yes.
So do you want me to talk about that?
But now's a great time to talk about it.
So I love pizza. I've eaten more pizza than most people have eaten in a lifetime, so I have to do yoga every day to counter that. And our company, Pizza City USA, so I can be found at Amy at pizzacityusa as well.com. Pizza City USA is our website. And I would love to give away 2 tickets to a walking tour of ours, which we will go until the weather turns really bad. So hopefully early November, we'll go through early November and doing our socially distanced, COVID-friendly masks while you're not eating walking tours of 4 pizzerias in 3 hours or less doing a walking tour. I'd be thrilled to give that to your listeners. 2 tickets.
Awesome. Amy, we've given away a lot of stuff on this podcast. We've never given away food.
There you go. I got to be different. I mean, everybody's going to just download their methodology. I mean, you can call me and email me and text me, amydordek@gmail.com, if you want to email me about sales methodologies, but pizza is a lot more fun.
I love it. Amy, this has been a delicious conversation.
Same.
Thank you very much for babbling.
You're welcome. Love babbling with you. This was really fun. Thank you for including me today.
To learn more about our guest, go to the show notes at www.salesbabble.com, and you can find this episode and all the show notes for past episodes right on the homepage. Now, one of the best ways people hear about Sales Babble is from listener reviews. If you could go to your favorite podcast app and leave us a 5-star comment, that would be really great, because word of mouth is how podcasts spread. If you have a question or a comment about this episode or any episode, don't hesitate to reach out by clicking on the Babble Me button right on the website. Love to hear what you think. That's all we've got for today, so until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.